Good evening, everybody. My name is Will McMahon. I'm facilitating this meeting for TAS, talking about socialism from a Marxist point of view. Welcome to everybody. Tonight, we're going to be having a discussion about China. Loong-Yu is a Labour campaigner and a writer based in Hong Kong who recently moved to London. His book, China's Rise, Strength and Fragility, was published by Merlin Press in 2012. And his most recent book is Hong Kong in Revolt, The Protest Movement and the Future of China, published by Pluto Press in 2020. He argues that state ownership does not equal socialism, and he'll be putting that argument to us this evening. So for those of you who are new, and we have new faces tonight, our sessions work like this. We will give our Loong-Yu a 15-minute intro time, and what will happen then is once it's finished, we will give people 3 minutes to speak. And the reason we do this is because we think it allows people to make the main point they want to make. It also allows people to come back into the conversation later, which we welcome. We might invite Al to come in halfway through the conversation to pick up any points that you make, and then give him time at the end of the meeting to kind of sum up what he thinks he's heard and what he thinks of the discussion and what his view is. Just to be clear, this is being recorded and will go out on YouTube. We have over 30 now sessions like this on YouTube and a wide range of subjects, but this will be out on YouTube. So if you need to be cautious about, what you're going to say in terms of try and keep it, don't libel anybody, I think is what I'm saying. If you want to keep your screen off, then keep your screen off. That's fine. We welcome comradely debate and discussion and vigorous arguments, but we always do our best to keep it comradely, and that's part of my role as chair. I think I introduced myself as Will McMahon. Sorry if I didn't. So we expect the meeting will last about an hour and a half. It will certainly finish by 9 o'clock because we have a very strict rule on that. And with that, I think I will now introduce Ao Loong-Yu to talk about his discussion on is China socialist. So over to you, Lau, and I'll tell you when you have 5 minutes to go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yes, thank you for inviting me to this gathering, and I hope that yes, my sharing with you about my idea about China may provoke more debate. Yes, I think China is a very, very important issue, not only in Asia but globally speaking. So because the time is tight, so I go straight into the subject. Let me tell you this: my presentation will be briefly divided into two parts, because my approaches to the issue will be mainly firstly a historical approach, secondly a relational approach. For the first part, yes, we about historical approach, which means that I think that for the more than 70 years of China, the history of China since 1949, basically we can have six historic moments or junctures which would define the stages of China. Probably I won't be able to go through all of them, yes, but briefly, I think if we talk about whether China is socialist and so on, we have to go back actually to 1941. 1941 was the was the moment when Mao Zedong launched his ratification campaign in Yan'an. The more materials were dug up in the past 30, 40 years. now verified actually is what the old Trotskyists has always been, yes, pointing the fingers to this ratification, so-called ratification campaign, that it was no more than framing up innocent peoples, intellectuals, people who have more independent minds, and even just writers. They are not political activists. People like, for instance, Wang Shiwei. He was wrongly accused of being a Trotskyist, and therefore he is just a literary critics, and also writings about literature. So he just have some essays which was a bit critical, of these huge inequalities even in Yan'an. So he was beheaded actually. He was beheaded because of his essays. So thousands of people were being framed up, and for nothing actually. And the sole purpose actually, in retrospect, uh, the main result was Mao Zedong was able to be the supreme leader of the party. And just after the 1941 ratification campaign, he had the Politburo to pass a resolution naming him as the only leader, top leader, who could make final decisions on anything important. And this clause was a secret decision actually. It was not disclosed by the time, and for years. So while the Communist Party was in a war with Japan and in alliance with the KMT, the party but also always launched a lot of democratic criticisms against the Kuomintang. But at the same time, actually, this kind of going back to a personal dictatorship has been developing very fast during this war against Japan, and therefore we had the 1941 ratification campaign. So this what's important is precisely this, to make it simple, that it was while the Chinese Communist Party by that time, much of its public propagandas were always about democracy. But essentially, the party has long, after the Communist parties was fled to the rural, and then he has enlarged its rural army as peasant armies, and then for more than 20 years, this kind of the originally internal party democracy simply, gave way to dictatorial rule already, and the adoption of the motion to declare Mao as the sole top leader, that is important, is precisely because when Mao was getting more and more adventurous in his industrialization and the quick leap forward, and there are already many wrongdoings, and we all now know, of course, yes, the great leap forward, we eventually started 40 or to 50 million people. So this is this unscientific adventures in launching his commune, or the or the advance in heavy industry and so on. So why there were no uh, strong inner parties opposition to this madness? If we look at that, actually, because of this personal autocracy, it stopped the possibilities of really changing course when there are more opposition, when there were party democracy. All this is not by 1950s, is all absent. So that's why we have this kind of terrible consequences. So this historical moment is the starting point of what I want to say. And then the next moment is 1949. At the very beginning, when the peasant armies entered the cities, it was always they will impose martial laws. And so it's and then 1957, when the so-called 100 Flower Blossoms campaign started, and there were too much criticism, and then Mao turned it into an anti-righteous campaign. So, and then followed by the fourth moment is the Cultural Revolution. And then it was in the name of revolution, in the name of opposing the bureaucracy and so on and so forth. But in the end, the Cultural Revolution was practically was ended by imposing again military martial rule, and tens of millions of these red guys were being sent to the countryside, living in dire poverty and so on, in the names of learning from the small peasants. Although most of these peasants may are half illiterate. So and then yes, Mao died between 1976 and 1979. You have Mao died, and then Deng Xiaoping came to power, and he returned to capitalism very soon. It was the but the last moment is important. It is the moment between the years of 1989 to 1993, because in the 1980s, although Deng Xiaoping was going down the road of capitalism, the steps were still very calculated, step by step and so on, very cautious. But the problem lies in this, that even with this lower pace of capitalism restoration and so on, the bureaucracy, all levels of bureaucracy, enrich themselves through corruption, through setting up their own companies and so on. So it was also the period where the bureaucracy began to push-pacify themselves. So, and then and one of the important elements which triggered off the 1989 democratic movement was exactly this: that 打倒关岛, that down with those officials who are involving in speculation and commercial activities and so on. So this was the a break. The 1989 first and foremost was a breakout of a contradiction between the bureaucrats and the people. And then the result, everyone's here knew of the June 4th massacre, but the story didn't end here, because because some of these old Stalinist cadres want to go go back to a Stalinist model, but then Deng Xiaoping disagreed, and that was when he toured in the south, make his south tour in Guangzhou, and to promote a complete restoration of capitalism. So this is the first part of the story. And then the second part of the story was about we have to also look at a relationship approach. Means, yes, we have to look at the relationship between politics and economies and the class and so on. So I will argue that my approach is also a class-centered, that you have to look at how the working class see and be treated by the party. Okay, so essentially speaking, yeah, whereas in Mao's era, the so-called planned economy basically is a calculation based on use value, and then from Deng Xiaoping onwards, actually, yes, most of these land, labor, means of productions, they all becomes commodities, even if these were state-owned enterprises. For smaller SOEs, they will be privatized. Some will not actually that small. But for big one, yes, they retain in state control. But these state companies, actually, they will be most of them will be we have IPO in in New York or in Hong Kong and so on. So not to mention in Shanghai. Okay, so we have these. They also run like commercial companies, and making profits is important. Yeah, of course, it also has the committed to the state plan. But the problem lies here that, yeah, while the mother companies could be more state planned, but those affiliates companies which are listed in the stock markets and so on, they were run on profits achievement. So that is one thing. And secondly, most important thing is that, as I said, that these state-owned companies were run by bureaucrats, which was party officials, and these party officials themselves are also push specified to an extent that they do not represent any transition to socialism and so on. Therefore, we have now, yeah, since 2 years back, we have that was why essentially we have economic cycles in China. We have economic huge bubbles in the property markets, and 2 years ago, this bubble finally burst. So my time is up, I think. Yeah. So I wrap in one sentence. So these these presentations of the historical and the relational approach essentially made and remake the working class. The old state-owned working class, which has higher benefit, it no longer exists. All workers are now actually just wage workers, and their conditions, it depends which industry, but as a whole, the labor shares in the national income actually has been falling for many decades already. Okay, I finish here. Thank you.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much. just realised how mad it was to ask somebody to speak for 15 minutes on 60 years of Chinese history. Um, we'll give you time to come back in. I mean, that was a brilliant summary, I have to say. Um, so maybe do people want to make some contributions? Do people want to speak or ask questions? Has anybody got any questions? Because maybe that's an easier way in to the conversation. Okay, if you don't, let's go straight to contributions. Who would like to speak first? As ever, you get 3 minutes, and I will stop you after 3 minutes. Um, who would like to go first? This is most unusual, Al. I think you've stunned people into silence.
Oh, this is not my objective, obviously. I would like to I would like to have debate.
Yeah. Well, let me kick off then, because a question immediately came into my mind when you were speaking, which was you said there was a transition to capitalism, yeah, and like through the great modernizations, the four great modernizations and all that kind of stuff, Deng Xiaoping, etc. So, what do you think it was? People will always ask this question. What do you think it was beforehand? What was it transiting from? If it was transiting to capitalism?
Okay, yeah. Well, this is a very big question, and um, uh, let me begin with this. I do not think that Mao's China is a kind of state capitalism.
Okay.
It's just it's just not that doesn't make too much sense because whereas you have in capitalism, even in poor countries, you can have you can have economic cycle, you can have overproduction or overcapacities, right? Yeah. But this was not Mao's China ever had.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and because it was just the planned economy basically is based on allocations of resources according to their use values. Yeah, not as exchange values. And therefore, it is not. It is actually so we Mao's China never have they could have serious imbalances between branches of industry, say between agriculture and heavy industry. Uh, but it has never experienced the kind of surplus productions in the capitalist sense, overproduction in the capitalist sense. You know, if it is overproduced of steels, then they just put it under the storage, right? So they did not have to destroy it or they did not have to wipe it out. And the companies and the company they don't the companies involved doesn't have to wind them up, liquidate it, and so on. So the functioning and the mechanism is very, very much different from capitalism. So, but on the other hand, I would say the Mao's revolution was a anti-capitalist revolution.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's basically wiped out the landlord class and the capitalist class, and in some and I would say sometimes it's overdoing things. Uh, Including just very very small petty bourgeoisie. It was also wiped out totally or near total. So yeah, but on the other, it was anti-capitalist. But I always argue that anti-capitalism does not necessarily mean socialism, especially from China perspectives as a very huge population countries, as a very with an ancient history, and was only have regular trade exchanges very lately in the centuries. With capitalism, I mean, or with the West, it was not only until late in 19th centuries that so-called free trades began to flourish.
Yeah.
So it is China is in many senses quite different. So I would say that of course you have I come from the traditions of the Fourth International, yes, because Hong Kong the only left the only left currents in Hong Kong has always been just either you are Trotskyist or you are anarchist. Yeah? Of course, there are Maoists, but nobody used these words for a long time already because for whatever reason. I don't go into detail, but
Yeah.
anyway, but anyway, yes. Previously, yes, we all define China, Mao's China, as a deformed worker state.
Mm.
So it is so it is it is a contradiction from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
really important point, actually, that it was. And actually, we've got a couple of hands up now, Al, because I think you've sparked something off here. So I'm going to take Susan first and then Walter. Susan, you've got 3
Just
minutes.
very quickly, and it relates to something that Al had raised with the elimination of the landed aristocracy. One of the nonsense that I heard, oh, China is still socialist, is because ownership of land is still held by the state, yada yada. And I wanted Al to actually talk a little bit about, because land ownership and how it is done in China, and do you need, for example, private ownership of land to have capitalism or not? So this is the thing that I'd like Al to speak on. It just sparked my interest what he just said 2 seconds ago.
Yeah, I'll hold that and I'll come back to you, Al. Let's see what Walter has to say. Walter.
I mean, I certainly agree that China now is capitalist, but what Al called a big question: what was China before the transformation led by Deng Xiaoping? And I would like to bring up the fact that that question was debated by the Chinese Trotskyists in 1950-51, right after the revolution. And there was a three-sided debate, very much like the three-sided debate over the Soviet Union that was going on among Trotskyists internationally, um, ever since, pretty much ever since Trotsky's death. And there was one, well, the majority faction said that China was a deformed worker state, as Al pointed out, but there were also minorities. Zheng Qiaolin said it was a state capitalist, or what he later called cadre capitalist society. And Wang Fangxi said it was bureaucratic collectivism. And he had an exchange with Max Shachtman, the leader of the bureaucratic collectivist faction in the United States at that time. And I thought it was a very valuable exchange. And I think both Zheng Qiaolin and Wang Fangxi established that China could not be a worker state because the revolution had not been made by the working class. And in fact, it had been made through the suppression, or the result of the revolution was the suppression of the working class, of all its independent activities. So the working class could not be said to be the ruling class, even in a deformed way. Now, obviously, I can't give any depth to that argument in 3 minutes, but it is really something that has to be discussed.
Yeah, thanks for that, Walter. And we'll bring you back in, yeah, because we're gonna follow through on this. Chris Jones.
Hi. Yeah, it's again a question rather than anything else, which is Al referred to the contradictions between the working class and the Communist Party, relating, I think, to sort of the late 80s, Tiananmen Square, and so on. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about what that actually means in detail. I mean, the events of Tiananmen Square were, all over everywhere on the telly, and we all heard about that. But I've no idea of how working class opposition was organised, levels of repression that might have been occurring up to that period. I just know there was that explosion. So it'd be very useful in terms of getting a sense of that contradiction between the bureaucratized Communist Party and the workers en masse, organised or not.
Okay. Minnie and Graham. Who's speaking? Oh, is it Minnie? Hi, Minnie.
Hi, Will. Thanks, Al. Yeah. Just a couple of points that looked up that obviously, well, it's said that China has gone from one of the poorest countries on earth to removing 800 million people from poverty. It's got universal literacy, apparently, and a longer life expectancy than the US. And in 2023, China accounted for an extraordinary 63% of global net additions in total renewable capacity. I know it's built so much infrastructure, high-speed rail, and there's thousands of kilometers of high-speed rail planned. So are you saying it's state capitalism? There's a lot of planning that's going on centrally, it would appear. Mm-hmm. Also, just to say that you were saying that the population of workers are being impoverished every year more so. But the story we're being sold in the West is that China's successful. And when you see, for example, I live in Liverpool and we have a lot of Chinese students in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of Chinese students coming over here to study. Mm-hmm. Are they just the children of the bureaucracy? Or are there lots of ordinary Chinese, is it paid for by the state? Also, could you talk about, I was talking to a Chinese student, oh gosh, about 4 years ago, and they mentioned that they weren't able to study Marx. They had to do it underground, that they couldn't study Marx. One more question, Al, could you talk about IT? And has China got an everything app which involves the people being surveilled and the social credit system? Thanks a lot.
Right. Oh, really interesting stuff from everybody there. There's a lot for you to chew on there, Al. We've got the relationship between land and capitalism. Who owns the land? How's that organized? Chris wanted to talk about the conflict between the working class and the bureaucracy, and what was going on there. And Minnie is, when we run into Chinese students in Liverpool, are they children of the bureaucracy, or do people have an opportunity? Everybody has that opportunity to travel. And I think rightly brings up the question that we see a lot of, certainly in the Western media, about state surveillance and social credit and how all that's working. So if I can chuck those at you, I'll give you a little bit of time to do it, but I think I'll stop you after 10 minutes if that's all right, and then go for another round of contributions. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Okay.
That's quite challenging.
Do your best. I'll be relaxed, but do your best.
Yeah. But I will. Yes, I will ask. But I will ask our audience. Yes.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot about Walter's point about bureaucratic collectivization as well. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's just I will ask our audience, yes, to read my book about China. And also my articles on more recent comments on various websites. It's all distributed everywhere. It's everywhere. Just I don't have a personal website. But anyway, I would first, yes, if I just have 10 minutes, yes, I would, more focus on facts, okay? Firstly, about land. Yes. Well, it depends on whether rural lands or urban land. So it's different. For rural, yeah, the one of the rare, quite rare, one of the rare, positive consequences of the 1949 revolution was precisely the land reform. Yeah, and the land was distributed to the peasants. Although what was horrible was in in just 5-6 years, then you have collectivization in a mad speed, and then you have people's commune, and so this kind of madness actually. So this is the land. There's no more, peasants have no control of even what to plant, what to grow on the land. But well, after Deng Xiaoping's came back to power, this was changed, and but the land, of course, never returned to the peasants as individual properties. So the land was still collective property. And that was why what is the horrible things in the past 40 years is precisely there is a war going on over land in the rural. That the village and the township officials, they were always in collusions with mafia, with rich peasants or with rich merchants to rob, land grabbing, which you know very well that many parts in the world. China has these problems, and the biggest resistance was in Wuhan 10 years ago already. So you can check it up. So in urban land, that was different. Urban land was always state owned, okay, since 1949. But the problem was since 1980s, the municipal governments actually turned the state-owned land. They turn it into actually private. So, well, technically you can say it is not private because it will sell the land to developers, and then the developers sell the houses to the mortgage buyers, and it was no more than 70 years. Okay, so but the problem, this is even more crazy and even more criminal. Actually, is that this kind of land auction they learn from Hong Kong. Actually, so if you are tricking the people to buy something which only lasts 70 years, millions of dollars. I mean, renminbi, millions of renminbi, and you can only just 70 years of ownership. Yeah. So, and actually, this 70 years is also very, very conditional. I don't go into detail. And what was the result of this kind of so-called state ownership of urban land? The consequence was the big bubble. And you have now the biggest developers going bankrupt. And we have now deflations, and so on and so forth. And secondly, that about I know whenever I talk about China's these polarizations in wealth, people will always come up with to me, yes, look, this China is lifting 800 billion per people poor from above the poverty line. Yeah. But of course, everyone knows the World Bank definitions of $1 later was raised to 1.25, I think. I don't know the recent update figures. The $1 a day. Those below that benchmark, it was considered poor. So China has its own poverty poverty measurement as well. But every sensible persons will always critical of this kind of very artificial line and so on. But what is more important was that I acknowledge one thing, that the absolute poverty has very much alleviated. I acknowledge that. Just then, I didn't say that workers' wages has been going down. I didn't say that, because everyone knows nominal wages were different from real wages. But what I was talking about was the labor share in the national income. And there were figures on that. And since 1990s, when China's experienced a accelerations of capitalist restoration, the labor share of the national income goes down rapidly. And also, at the same time, profit rose rapidly. So I don't go into details, but it was on my book. But of course, it was a bit old book, yeah. But the basic trend has never reversed, no. And that was why we have such low household consumption for 40 years now already, even lower than the 1980s, the household consumption level. So that was my response to the question. Well, yes. And of course, you can mention about this. Yes, great leap forwards. Another great leap forwards in industrialization, in urbanization, in the mileage of high-speed train and so on. And actually, left scholars also talk with me over this kind of impression when he was invited to China for an official visit. But it's always, I'm sorry, it's always a little bit distressful to hear this. Just when we, just when our criteria of socialism becomes, this kind of high-rise buildings and high-speed trains and so on. Hong Kong had that long time ago, right? And that was why Hong Kong was considered to be a golden goose to Beijing. Like the goose that laid golden eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Chinese officials visiting Hong Kong, yes, they were also amazed by these kind of modernizations and urbanization in the 80s. But Hong Kong, was Hong Kong ever a socialist? No, it's Gini coefficients, the measurements of rich and poor. The Gini coefficient is more than 5% a long time ago already. It was a capitalist heaven. We shouldn't just when our criteria for socialism has been lowered to such a point, just we think like a capitalist. By chance, actually, I read Locke book. Yes, your great English philosopher, and he was a typical, as Alan Wood had the great writer, yes, has mentioned about, yes, described the Locke as a perfect, something like that, yeah, a perfect capitalist philosopher, because he argued that why we are entitled to rob the land from the originals in America, because we can improve the productivity, and the originals could not.
Okay.
And my God, yes, this professor from I don't mention the name. The professor talked to me that, oh look, they have a GDP growth rate of 10% every year. Oh my God, this is when does this rapid economic growth becomes a criteria for socialism?
Okay, Al, I'm going to stop you there because you put the question there. I'm going to bring in a couple of other speakers. I'm going to bring in Nick for 3 minutes and then Saraya for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Al, for a really interesting introduction, which has already sparked some very, very interesting discussion as well. I only have a few minutes, so I'm going to get right to the point. First of all, I think socialists, Marxists, should be absolutely clear that there is nothing at all socialist about China. And I think we should go further, and we should say that China now, I don't have time to go into the discussions that Walter has raised, although I will share this observation that I don't see how it could be any sort of workers' state, whether deformed or otherwise, because the workers never had control of the state. But that's by the by. China today is an immense, powerful capitalist economy and an immense, powerful capitalist state. And I think Marxists need to be clear about this, because there is a lot of confusion, in my opinion, and a lot of illusions among sections of the left, including in Britain, who see somehow as China being an anti-imperialist force, whereas I see it actually as an imperialist force vying for domination of the world with the United States. And the idea that abounds at the moment amongst certain sections, and perhaps in certain parts of the world to a greater degree, that multipolarity behind China and Russia will somehow resolve the problem of imperialism is a big mistake. And so I think we have a job to do to explain what has happened in China and what China is, and look at it in the way that you've done in terms of facts and figures, and compare it with the way that I look at socialism. I see socialism as a new form of production, a new mode of production rather, that supersedes capitalism. It would be a society in which there is no exploitation of labor. It would be a classless society. It would be a society in which the state has withered away. China is nothing like that whatsoever. It has become more and more integrated into the world economy. It's about a fifth of world production. The working class is exploited. I'd like Al for you to comment on some of the figures that I've read, that there are in the region of 1,000 billionaires in China, 80 in the Chinese Communist Party leadership. The fourth richest man in the world is in China, and so on. Huge companies, and I'm going to stop there.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for keeping to time. It's appreciated. Soraya and then Walter.
Thanks. Yes, I just got some questions and a little bit of an echo of what Nick said. And thank you very much for the introduction, Al. I don't think that China was ever a workers' state, for it to become a deformed workers' state, because the workers didn't have control. My brief understanding is that it was a peasant movement that came to power. But my questions really are these: the movement that there's been and there was in the past against the iron control that the bureaucracy had on society, and what happened in this. For me, China is a completely capitalist state. In the movements, have there been movements that have in any way come to the conclusion that, in fact, whilst there'll be industrial struggles and so forth, and struggles for more democracy, that there is a need to actually get rid of the capitalist system of exploitation to be able to have proper democracy, and for society as a whole, and by that I mean the majority of the working class, to decide how society is organised. I just don't know. I'm not suggesting that everybody immediately comes to the conclusion that you need to get rid of the capitalist system, but just interested if you've got details, information about what sort of ideas there are in those movements.
Thanks, Soraya. Walter. You're on mute, Walter. Sorry. You're on. We can hear you.
I previously brought up the debate going on in the 50s and before and after that over the class nature of China under Mao, which was controversial enough. But that's something of a moot point now because both the Soviet Union and that stage of China have passed. But a very live question now is the one that Nick referred to as to whether China is an imperialist country, and that's being much debated on the left. My own view is that there's lots of evidence on both sides. China, in many ways, behaves like an imperialist country. It tries to dominate its neighbors. It exports lots of capital and imports surplus value from countries in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and so on. It certainly super exploits the people of Xinjiang and prevents them from having an independent national existence if they should so want. But on the other hand, China remains, on the world scale, compared to the major imperialist countries, China remains a poor country. And in its international relations with the usual imperialists, the United States, Western Europe, Japan, and so forth, China is more exploited by the imperialist powers than it exploits people in the third world or throughout the world. So, in fact, China's working class is the most super exploited, or is certainly the largest super exploited working class that ever existed. And it's hard to say that a country that is more exploited than exploiting is itself an imperialist country. It certainly the ruling class certainly has ambitions in that direction. It would like to be recognized as part of the imperialist band of brothers in sharing the loot of the world, but it itself is an exploited country, and that leads to a very difficult question. And my own conclusion is that China is not quite imperialist because of that problem, and I'd certainly like to hear Ao's opinion on that question and others.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. That's really helpful, that question, actually. And those three contributions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to ask other people to come in if they want to for last orders who haven't spoken. Yeah. And then I'll come back to you, Al, and then you can have a bit of time to think about all this stuff. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting question, Walter, about China's position in the world, actually, and what's going on with China's position in the world. Just to take the conversation back a little bit, I wonder how far, I mean, in my mind, it's kind of China had an anti-imperialist revolution to regain sovereignty, basically. And as part of that anti-imperialist revolution, it ran into the ruling class. Yeah, it ran into the global ruling class and an emerging ruling class in its own country, and it was thereby to gain sovereignty. It was necessary to get rid of the capitalist ruling class. What that kind of formation, what that kind of social formation that gives you, I'm not sure. And I think that having looked at what happened in the Soviet Union, in the Russian Revolution, the Soviet Union, I think in the response to that and the division that opened up in the Marxist movement, mainly between state capitalism and deformed worker states, but also with a bureaucratic collectivist argument, I think a lot of us got trapped into positions which stopped us being able to think about what it was we were looking at when it came to China and other countries across the world that had resisted imperialism, overthrown local capitalism, what had been created, and we got very much locked into two positions, I think, certainly from my experience on that. And it really did stop us thinking. And it seemed to me that actually the bureaucratic collectivism is quite an interesting thought at this stage. It becomes quite appealing if you think these other two formulations don't really work. But then again, bureaucratic collectivism might not be it. So we've some thinking to do about that. And also, it's also interesting about the point that Minnie raised, because I've heard it said on many occasions that China has taken 800 million people out of poverty. And I've also heard the argument put by John Ross, who you may remember, who was an English Marxist who is now working in China. And he basically says,
I read his lousy book.
okay, he basically said, you know, cut it short, Stalin got it wrong. The collectivization under Stalin was wrong. It was that screwed the Russian Revolution. Ross has almost turned into a Bukharinist, yeah, that there is a long transition. And you have a group of people at the top of the Chinese Communist Party who understand as Marxists that we're involved in a long transition to communism. And this would fit in with some of the arguments or some of the facts that Minnie was putting forward about them taking the country forward. I think it's much simpler. I think the Chinese bureaucracy saw what South Korea had done, saw what Japan had done, saw what Hong Kong had done, and said, okay, let's have some state-centered accumulation. And that acted as a defense against recolonization from imperialism. And it's been remarkably successful, actually, in many, many ways. And what you call that, I don't know. But I think that's where I'm kind of rested on it. Next question. What about the billionaires? What about the billionaires in China? What does that tell us about society? Saray's question, I'll link into what Chris raised earlier, was about, Saray was talking about, is there an anti-capitalist? Is there a possibility of a movement of people saying we want to overthrow Chinese capitalism? Is that a prospect? And Chris was also talking about earlier the conflict between the working class and the Chinese Communist Party and what that looks like. And just to bring you back to Walter's point again, giving you a lot of work to do here around what your thoughts are on Chinese imperialism. I mean, I tend to read them as, in my kind of lighter moments, I think China's got a good argument for being worried about American imperialism and building itself up. It's got a good argument for being worried about Western imperialism, given what happened the last time those imperialisms intervened into China. Does that necessarily, China's growth, make it imperialist? So those are some of the points that have been raised. Now I'm going to ask people to come back if you haven't had a time to talk, or you have a question and you haven't spoken before, if you would like to speak and you haven't spoken before, I'm going to give you a little while. I don't mind silences. So there are lots of people in the room, so it'd be great to have some questions and contributions on what I know is a complex subject, but are there any final questions and contributions from people who haven't spoken previously? I think we've about half the room, about 40% speak, so if anybody else wants to pitch in now. Okay, that's long enough. Nick, you got 3 minutes. And you need to come off mute.
Sorry. Really interesting points from Walter, and it obviously deserves a lot longer discussion. I accept the points you're making about the super exploitation of the Chinese working class, but I don't think that in itself prevents China from being an ambitious imperialist or growing imperialist power. Put that to one side for a moment. The reason why I think it's so important is that because we are heading, it seems to me, towards global conflict. What America and NATO have been trying to do in Ukraine vis-a-vis Russia is to circle Russia in order to get to China. They want to prevent China from continuing to rise and being a global competitor. And a lot of people see in this struggle that the working class and the socialist movement should take sides. I don't. I believe that the working class internationally should take an independent position and not back the ruling class in Russia, in Ukraine, nor in China. And I think that that is important, particularly in the global south. It does appear to me that sections of the, if you might want to call it the left or the progressive movement, look to China as somehow being saviors. I see it as a growing inter-imperialist rivalry, one that could come to complete fruition, and in which the working class should not take sides, but should chart its own course in order to argue and campaign and act for socialism. I just want to, I was going to draw people's attentions to the Morning Star, which people will know in Britain is the official paper of the Communist Party of Britain. Recently, they reported without comment on the third plenary session of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee. But a more interesting report came from China Daily, which is the official daily English paper of the Chinese Communist Party. And I would welcome Ao's comments on this. This is what they write, obviously coming from the official point of view of the Chinese Communist Party. Private companies, they say, so this is what they say: the private economy has become an intrinsic element of China's economic system and a significant force in sustainability and healthy economic development. Private companies contribute more than 60% of GDP, 70% of technological innovation, and 80% of urban employment, according to official data. Well, they've got that from the horse's mouth. They call themselves socialism, but they call it market socialism with Chinese characteristics. In other words, it's capitalism. I agree with Will's description. It is state-led, state-directed capitalist development, nothing more and nothing less. And that is capitalism. And what they've agreed at this year's plenary session, resolution: efforts will be made to remove barriers to market access, improve the long-term mechanism for private enterprises to participate in major national projects, support capable private companies in leading significant national technological and innovation projects, and provide private enterprises with greater access to major national scientific research infrastructure.
I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Minnie or Graham, did you have your hand up? I looked up, I looked down, and it.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask about the surveillance point and about everything up. I just wanted, and the social credit system.
Surveillance and social credit,
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Al, over to you.
Okay. But it's a whole lot of questions which
by all means take your time, because I think people are really interested in what you have to say.
Okay, yeah. Okay. But this time I'll begin with an abstract concept first. I'm not going to into detail, but I would like to I would like to say that briefly. Well, state capitalism I already criticize it. Yeah, this formula. But well, bureaucratic collectivisms or deformed democracies or bureaucratically degenerate democracy, these kind of things. Yeah, I began this thinking for many years ago already, and I would say that now that I am somewhat decided that all of these terms, these labels are not satisfactory. The most dissatisfactory was state capitalism. But the other two, each in their own ways, actually scraps important features of this regime under Mao. I think the benefit of this default worker state was that it, grabs the contradiction that there were two contradictory class or case. On one hand, the bureaucracy; on the other hand, the working people. And it's kind of critical of this bureaucracy. But this kind of contradictory is important to grasp because, well, then you could have a very eventually this is not a stable thing, right? It will break up, it will burst into the great crisis and so on. And the bureaucratic collectivism's term, the positive thing is it grabs the rule of the bureaucracy, this kind of firm rule, imposing totalitarian governance over the people, and they are seems to be very homogeneous. That was what it's such a power, coherence and power, right? But there is no contradiction. The bad thing is, then why did the Soviet Union finish? If the bureaucracy is a ruling class on its own, if it is a new mode of production, which means it can reproduce itself nearly automatically, right? Just like capitalism. But well, after 1991, there was no more Soviet Union. The theories of bureaucratic collectivism then faces a very big challenge in that. I don't know whether the people ever written to explain this, yeah. Because honestly speaking, I always focus more on the current and the future, less on the past. Yeah? But I will be delighted that if someone could enlighten me over this, if there's people written over there on the subject. But about the terms of the default worker states or degenerate worker states, this kind of thing. Yes, it grabs the contradiction, but the problem is, okay, who will win in the who are more in the upper hand? Who has the future? We didn't know about this, yeah. And that was why it's a funny. There was always some occasionally there was some funny debate among the Chinese Trotskyists. For those Chinese Trotskyists who were more critical of the Chinese Communist Party, they will stress the part of deformed, okay? And then for those who are a little bit more, a little bit less critical of Communist Party, they will emphasize the other half of the formula. That is, okay, if no matter how deformed it was still a worker state. So the two sides often debate over this, yeah. But I think, yeah, in some way we have to go back to Trotsky's own writing. I think all these kind of debates eventually become too static. But Trotsky's, when he wrote on that, he was always in a very dynamic approach, because the world was collapsing when he was in the late 1930s, and he repeatedly said that well, there's everyone knows this, I think, yeah. So I don't have to go into detail that Soviet Union is in a critical crisis, and actually, I think some of the Trotskyists has forgotten the original characterization of Soviet Union by Trotsky, because he repeatedly said that literally that the bureaucracy in its own inertia, in its own innate tendency, was to restore capitalism. The later-day Trotskyists, I think, when they argued that this bureaucracy will defend the collective property indefinitely, this was not what Trotsky said. No. And what's more important is that he also wrote in the Revolution Betrayed, literally in his own words, that if we say that the Soviet Union was a degenerated worker state, it was only on the condition of one political criteria, not on economic criteria. I have written a piece also in the Spectre's magazine in America. I'm arguing that some of the Marxist economists and some of the European Marxists, when it approaches about China, they always always just focus on the economic criteria or meters. But this is, I don't think it is suitable. Political issues, political elements are sometimes more important. And in this sense, what Trotsky was saying was that the Soviet Union, if it remains as a bureaucratized worker state, it was only because it still feared the working class. Because the working class were the barrier of the October Revolution. It was in the memory. So he's saying that the concept of bureaucratized worker state only applies when these generations of revolutionary workers still exist. But in the 1950s, if they were not there, they were all in the 70s or even 80s. So in no sense there is still a worker state there. So I think that was also why some people will be taken by surprise when there was when the 1991 eruptions broke when the 1991's crisis broke out, and then you can see, wow, the workers just stand by when the bureaucrats just privatize everything. And there's no workers rebellion. No, not big one actually. Yeah. So this is, but that if we go back to Trotsky's definitions of what it means by worker state, the deformed worker state or degenerated worker states, that was actually much more prophetic and much more correct. Yeah. So of course, in retrospect, things are much more clearer, and therefore I think a re-evaluation is required and long due. So let me stop here about the Chinese about these terms, about this theory thing. But I briefly now touch on, if I'm allowed it, touch on the Chinese imperialism.
Yep.
And I think, again here, I think one should not just stop at economic criteria. But even if you look at the economic criteria, if you measure, if you look at the share of capital export of China among the world, if we look at, not to mention those the export of merchandises and so on, well, it is quite a huge capital export country, in the top 10 or even more, even higher. It depends on the year, right? So but one should not just limit on this. We should also look at the political side. And by political side, I am saying that the Communist Party long before it restored capitalism, it was always has a empire in its mind, although in the background, because it always see itself as the legitimate successor to the KMT's idea of China. And what was the KMT's idea of China? From the very beginning, the KMT, when it rebuilt China since 1911, not technically speaking, by that time it was not called KMT, okay? But anyway, the KMT's China, from the very beginning, when it was so weak, it still want to succeed all the empire of the Qing dynasty. And Qing dynasty, of course, is an empire. It ruled over so vast a piece of land that that it was so ethnically so multi ethnicity, maybe much more than Austria. So it is from the very beginning, okay, the KMT was see itself as successor of the Qing imperial dynasty. And then the CCP succeeded this China dream as well. Of course, in the Mao's era, it was in the background. It was not that clear. It may go different ways, okay? Yeah. But when Deng Xiaoping came to power, and then not to mention when Xi Jinping came to power, this kind of rebuilding China's empire these agendas become real now. Therefore, in early 1990s, we still had a position that no, we will argue against that the Senkaku Islands shouldn't be taken by Japan, because it's a collusion between Japan and America to take to take possession of the Senkaku Island. We argue against that because by that time China is not yet that strong, and its imperial agenda has not been visible yet. But with Xi Jinping, this changed. So of course,
is that a big qualitative change with Xi Jinping?
Of course.
Okay.
So Xi Jinping well, this is actually it is not just his own, dream. Xi Jinping is just a representation of the most reactionary clique inside the top layer of the party. The second, the second red generation or the third red generation, the most that they see themselves as aristocracy actually. So this is and that was why, and I'm finishing, and that was why that China has drawn the so-called 9 dotted line all over South China Sea. And I tell you what, I was in Philippines, University of the Philippines, and I made a report there, and then about China, and then a Philippines the law professors approached me, and he talked about his experience of talking with Chinese diplomats. When he asked why China now claiming nearly all the South China Sea, and actually invading the what's the word you use? Is the economic boundaries of the ocean near your country.
Yeah.
What was the word? Yeah.
It's international treaty or limit.
Territorial waters.
Borders. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That you have the exclusive sovereign right over there. Yeah. So infringing all the Vietnam's, Philippines, Malaysia's, maritime region, right? Yes. So this diplomat's response was, well, you go ask the American. But okay, you have an issue with America, but it was we, the Philippines, a small country, who pay the price. That doesn't make sense, right? So no, I don't think China is. We can define China's action over the South China Sea as self-defensive. No, this is not. So it got, and it's also actually related to the China's imperial agenda, because what? It was not the Chinese Communist Party which invented the 9-dot line. It was the KMT. It invented this 9-dot line near the end of the Second World War, because the KMT rulers always see itself as successor of imperial China.
Okay.
This is in the mindset of the ruling elites from KMT to CCP.
Just one more thing from you, and I've worked you very hard, and people have found you really interesting. Just because Minnie's asked twice, I'm going to come back again on the point that Minnie made about social surveillance and social credit. So if you watch on your television screens in the UK, you see this worrying presentation about social surveillance and social credit in China. Is that accurate in your view?
Of course, this is China is already a digital 1984 society. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And the problem is, of course, which direction you look at is different, right? Mm-hmm. Just like there is a white elephant inside the room now, but you didn't look at it. You look at the opposite direction, then you see doesn't see anything, right? Mm-hmm. If you are state center, then you look, whoa, okay, how great the state, what economic miracles it has performed, and so on. But I am people center. And as that, yes, I measure China using this criteria, and that was why I was also for the first 10 years I actually involved in many field trips in China labor situation. I visited factories, I talked to workers, and so on, and I knew what the grass would look like. And back to this issue about social credit and so on. I can't go into detail because the time is running out. But actually, I have talked with quite different shades of leftists in UK, in America, in Australia, and so on. Sometimes, yes, I also being asked the same question, and some will respond that yes, China has a social credit system, but well, UK has one too. If you did not pay your rent for 5 months and so on, maybe yes, or if you did not pay your bank bank loan and so on, yeah, you will have your credit seriously affected, and you can't borrow any money, and sometimes people could have don't even deny the right to have a bank account. Mm-hmm. Yes, I know that. Yeah, UK has also this problem, or America and so on. But the problem is, the degree of control is still relevant. You can't mix, the China's kind of surveillance with those you have in UK. No, you can't. Yeah, both are bad actually. So yeah, but China is much more evil, and that was already quite visible. So during the zero COVID. The reason that it can successfully imposes a lock up, I always say This is not a lockdown, a regular lockdown to prevent as an emergency prevention of spreading of virus. No, it was a lock up. They lock people up using iron bars and locks to lock up people in their homes or in their buildings.
I'm going
And
to.
that was, yeah. But
Oh,
go on.
I'm going to stop you there because we
Okay.
never overrun on time.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
So I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to thank you for a really, really interesting session. Honestly, it's a really fascinating session. Right, lots of discussion, really, really good and very, very interesting. And you were very gracious in dealing with all the questions that came your way, and very clear in what you were talking about. So that's so thank you for that. Just I want to say before we finish, we have a discussion in a fortnight's time on the anti-migrant riots, and frankly, some of the frightening and pogromic-like scenes that we've seen in this country over the last few weeks. And we're going to debate what the meaning of that is, what the socialist response should be. So do join us in a fortnight, yeah? And if you've got any ideas about any subjects that you want us to debate, you can see the kind of forum we've got. We're very open. We want to have debate and discussion, and disagreement is welcome. So email us and let us know. We're always pleased to have people's ideas. So once again, thanks, Al. Thank you very much. And I've seen your thanks to the meeting. You got a lot of good feedback, I think. And thanks to people who spoke, thanks to people who came and attended, and thank you to people who asked questions. See you in a fortnight, and we will come out with a new list of meetings following that with subjects which I'm sure will be interesting, and I hope as interesting as this one was. So thank you very much, everybody.